Typically, when an NBA team decides to rebuild, the formula is pretty simple. You trade away your star player, especially if he's good, but not quite good enough to be the number one option on a championship team. You trade away quality role players because contenders will pay real assets for them. You take back bad contracts, you stack draft picks, you tank, and you hope. That's the blueprint. But at this trade deadline, something different happened. The Utah Jazz bought. The Washington Wizards bought. The Wizards traded for Trae Young in January, then doubled down and added Anthony Davis at the deadline. The Jazz went out and added Jaren Jackson Jr., rebuilding teams, buying stars. So in this video, I want to break down why these teams made those moves, why this trend will likely continue, and explain some important aspects of running an NBA franchise that fans, including myself sometimes, don't always fully consider. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That's Aristotle. And no, I didn't pull that from memory. I asked ChatGPT for a quote about self-awareness, but it still applies because just like players have strengths and weaknesses, coaches do, general managers do, front offices do. There's an ideal way to build a team. Draft your stars, develop them internally, retain them with bird rights, let them outperform their rookie scale contracts. We've seen it work with the Warriors dynasty, the Jokic-Murray Nuggets, Tatum and Brown in Boston, and most recently the defending champion OKC Thunder. That's the dream. It's cost effective, it builds connection with the fan base, it gives you flexibility. But here's the thing, the blueprint is extremely hard to execute. It requires elite drafting, elite development, elite patience. And if your front office struggles in either drafting or development, you pivot. Washington has had plenty of bites at the lottery apple since John Wall's injuries effectively ended that era. They had chances to draft the next franchise guy or build the perfect supporting cast around Bradley Beal, and more often than not, they missed. Rui Hachimura's development stagnated in Washington and he became a better version of himself in Los Angeles. Deni Avdija had a slow start but broke out in year 4 once he was fully unleashed as a starter, only to be traded at 23 years old because he supposedly didn't fit the younger timeline.
At 7, we have Avdija going to Portland via that Brogdon trade. I'm giving that one a B+. I didn't like it on Washington's behalf, but I love it on Portland's behalf. Portland needed more forwards, not more guards, and they got a damn good one in Deni Avdija, who just came off a career season. 15, I have Brogdon to Washington. I'm giving that a C+. I don't know. As of right now, I don't really like the trade from Washington's behalf, just because, like, Deni had his career year. He had the best year of his season, best year of his career thus far, and he's on a steal of a contract, especially in this day and age. I think over the next 3 years, he'll be making sub $16 million. A steal of a contract. I think he still has upside to hit and a potential and a ceiling to hit, and I think he was going to continue to grow as Washington trusted him with the ball in his hands going forward a lot more, and I thought he was going to be a key cog and a key piece of Washington's rebuild, and they just traded him away this offseason.
He was 23, and now he's essentially a franchise-level piece elsewhere. Corey Kispert is a solid player, but when Şengün, Trey Murphy, and Jalen Johnson were drafted nearby, you start to question ceiling evaluation. Johnny Davis was the real lowlight, a development miss in a draft where J-Dub and others were sitting right there. For years, Washington struggled to both draft well and develop properly. But from 2023 to 2025, something changed. Bilal was a bold trade-up swing with real two-way wing upside, and then you get the real foundational pieces, Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George. Sarr isn't just a traditional rim-protecting big. He's a modern defensive anchor with perimeter mobility. He can switch on to guards, cover space, alter shots without even blocking them, and offensively, the flashes are what make him intriguing. There's face-up comfort, close-out attacking ability, and occasional self-creation. If that becomes consistent, you're looking at a two-way 5 who can anchor a defense and scale offensively. That's franchise big upside. He's in that same tier as George, maybe even slightly ahead because of positional value and defensive impact. And then, speaking on Keyshawn George, a sharpshooting point forward with size and feel, At 6'7 or 6'8, he sees over defenses, can handle in space, initiate secondary action, and space the floor at a high level. When you combine size, processing speed, and shooting at that position, that archetype is gold in today's NBA. And his ceiling looks higher than what most originally anticipated. Add Trae Johnson in 2025, already one of the league's best young shooters, and suddenly Washington is actually hitting on draft picks and developing them properly. And that's the key. Once you have legitimate blue chip cost controlled talent, that's when you strike. So they bought low. Trae Young, one of the most talented offensive players in the league, had his value depressed by injury concerns, lineup data narratives, and the league's increasing bias against small guards. Washington acquired him without giving up a single first-round pick. Actually, not even any second-rounders. That's absurd value capture. Anthony Davis, an NBA 75 member and one of the greatest defenders of his generation, saw his market value dip because of age, health, and contract size. Washington gave up a likely late OKC first in 2026 and a protected 2030 Warriors pick. They capitalized at the lowest possible asking price. That's not desperation, that's timing. Now Utah's path is slightly different. Since trading away Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, they've gone 103 and 199, finishing 12th, 15th, and currently are 13th in the West. Their drafting has been solid but not transformative. Walker Kessler was a hit, Keontae George has broken out, Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski look promising relative to draft position. Ace Bailey at 5 in the most recent draft. Honestly, he has massive ceiling potential, even if consistency is still forming. But 3 years of drafting hasn't translated into meaningful team success, even with Lauri Markkanen in his prime. And the honest question is whether George or Bailey are guaranteed franchise-level players the way Donovan Mitchell was. That uncertainty matters. So Utah made a calculated move. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a fringe all-NBA caliber player and a defensive player of the year talent, the type of player Utah will never land in unrestricted free agency. The timing makes sense. Lowry is bouncing back, George is in year 3 of his rookie deal, Kessler is about to enter restricted free agency, so rookie extensions are coming soon. This was their last cost-controlled window before the roster gets expensive. They're still positioning themselves for the loaded 2026 draft, but planning to compete in 2027 when the class dips. That's forward-thinking roster architecture. And this is where fans often lose perspective. We live in ring or bust culture. If you're not a contender, you're a failure. But that mindset really only applies to the select few. The Lakers, the Knicks, Celtics, Warriors. Small markets operate differently. The NBA is entertainment. Adding AD, adding Trae, adding Jaren Jackson Jr., it makes your product more watchable. It drives ticket sales, social engagement, jersey revenue, and playoff home game revenue. General managers don't just answer to Twitter or Reddit. They answer to ownership. Owners care about ROI, luxury tax positioning, franchise image, and sustained profitability. We don't hear about that side publicly, but it absolutely influences decision making. This is why the trend will continue. Second apron restrictions limit traditional super team building. Superstars rarely hit unrestricted free agency anymore. Teams trade stars early to avoid losing assets for nothing. And the OKC blueprint exists. If you have 2 or 3 players massively outperforming rookie contracts, you can use that surplus value to add max level talent. It's a copycat league. Now, it's easier said than done, but teams, especially small markets and franchises without historic prestige, will try. I actually like this approach from Utah and Washington. It shows nuance, it shows adaptability, it shows awareness. But here's the final truth. Even with Trae, even with AD, even with Jaren Jackson Jr., the ceiling of Sarr, George, Bilal, Trae, Bailey, and Keontae will ultimately determine how far these teams go. The veteran star acquisitions accelerate relevance. The young core determines the championship ceiling. And we may be entering an era where rebuilding doesn't automatically mean tearing it down for 6 years. It might mean drafting well, developing well, and then striking when the market gives you opportunity. And honestly, that's a much more interesting version of team building. What's up, y'all? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one and you like these bigger picture NBA deep dives, check out my most recent deep dive breaking down the 2026 All-Star Game and what it really meant. And if you're into team rebuilds or the ongoing Nets series, I've got plenty of that on the channel too. Drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and other than that, I'll catch y'all on the next one.